It's a great pleasure to be here. It enables me to bunk. In fact, I've just driven back from UCT, and as Susan told you, this is my home, so I'm no longer working. I only heard a few scattered remarks of that introduction, and the one word that I heard said about 2 or 3 times was fun, which sets the stage perfectly for what I want to say to you. And also, I was very relieved that you said after this they're going to have some lunch and some wine, because the word fun to me also is associated with wine, and I was very alarmed when I saw these tables which seem to be covered in papers and pens and water. As I said, fun is a theme that's going to run through what I'm going to say to you, so you'll see what I mean when I get to that. The talk that Susan refers to was a talk in a series, the title of which was Medical Humanities, I think. And I spoke about something very similar to what your whole course is about. I spoke about art and the brain. And that's the title of my talk today. And I thought, oh shit, what am I going to say differently from what I said last time? So I've thought up something new. It builds on what I said last time. I will, therefore, by way of introduction, say 1 or 2 things about what I said last time, because, of course, I know most of you, if not all of you, weren't there. But for Susan's sake, you will see that sets the platform for what I'm going to talk about today. Now, look, I suppose I should actually take a step backwards and make a disclaimer. You have to understand, I am not an expert in your area. I don't know if anyone's an expert. Maybe Semir Zeki is about the only expert in your field, if there's anybody who's an expert in it. But I definitely am not. I don't really know anything much about what I'm going to talk to you about. I know a lot about the brain, and I know a lot about the mental functions of the brain, and I have a dim sort of intuition that this part of what I know about the brain and its functions must be relevant to what you're studying. But it's really just sort of, I'm putting it out there, and I'm hoping that you'll catch it and then make something sort of properly, authentically, academically correct out of it. Sorry about all the background noise. Just remember, that's fun. This is the subtext of my talk. So with that disclaimer, let me say this. I told you I'm an expert on the brain, and in particular on the mental functions of the brain. That's a discipline called neuropsychology. But for my sins, I am also trained in another discipline, and that discipline is called psychoanalysis. And in fact, my particular approach to neuropsychology has been to try to bring into it something of what the psychoanalytical approach to the mind is all about. Neuroscience is about objectivity, about proper science, reliable, valid knowledge about the mechanisms of this object called the brain. But the thing about the brain that makes it so remarkably interesting is it's not just an object, it's a subject. It feels like something to be a brain. I mean, you are your brain. And neuroscience, for all of its achievements, is often at risk of losing sight of that. It's not just about mechanisms, about information processing, about neural networks and all of that. It's also about the lived life, this stuff of subjective experience. That's what psychoanalysis, with all of its failings, tried seriously to get a grip on, to try to make some kind of science of subjective experience. There must be some sort of rules, some sort of principles, some laws governing the being of a person. And that's what it tried to do. So I trained, after training in neuroscience, in recognizing it's not quite the mind that they're talking about, it's a bit more like an information processing device. I thought, well, bloody hell, let me go and train as an analyst too. And then I spent the rest of my life trying to sort of bridge the gap between those two. So why am I telling you all of that? It's so that you'll understand this. I have, with my other hat on as a psychoanalyst, I've had the pleasure of psychoanalyzing a few artists of various kinds. And that's led me to some sort of rough and ready conclusions about what sets artists apart. Can you make some sort of basic generalization about artists? And on the basis of this very tiny, hi Raj, I didn't know you were here. Surely you're not a student on this course.
I'm teaching this.
Yeah, I suddenly thought these are students, and then there's Raj. It's kind of.
The students and presenters.
Oh, are the presenters all here? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so back to my story after that Rajian interlude, Ramasarian distraction. Based on that very, potted experience with all these artists, some of them dancers, some of them musicians, some of them painters, some of them sculptors, and this is a sculptor sitting over here. In a word, they're narcissistic. Forgive me, Bridget. You know what? Narcissism has got bad press. It's supposed to be a pejorative term, narcissist. But it's not. Narcissism it's also an important thing. It's, it's loving yourself, thinking, well, what is that L'Oreal advert? It's because I'm worth it. It's important to, if you don't think you're worth something, it's bad. So narcissism, you can be overly narcissistic, you can be underly narcissistic. But the narcissism of artists, I think has something to do with, when we're children, we're all narcissists. We all think we're the center of the world, and we have this kind of picture of how the world's going to be and how we're going to make the world and so on. And then as we grow up, in fact, in a way, the essence of maturation is you get that beaten out of you. And you sort of like realize, oh, well, my world's not going to be a product of me, I'm going to be a product of my world. And you kind of fit in, you realize you don't make the world makes you, you fit in with the world. You compromise, you make do. It's a little bit depressing, growing up. And artists, at least in part of their minds, they refuse to do that. They retain this sort of nature reserve of narcissism, where there's a part of them, which is the artistic part of them, which says, I'm not compromising. I'm not going to fit in with the world. I'm going to make at least this part of the world that's going to be a product of me. And it's going to be a product of my ideal picture. I don't mean necessarily ideal in a sense of formal beauty. Of course, I realize, that art takes all sorts of forms, forgive the pun, because it takes all sorts of non-forms also these days. I don't mean it in a formalist sense. I think that there's an idea of this is just right. That's perfection. I want it like that. And it can be in dance, it can be in musical composition or performance or in visual arts. It's something about not compromising, making that part of the world a product of me, a product of my idea of it being just right. And we, non-artists, we admire that because we've compromised. We've made do, we kind of like adjusted to reality. We're boring and defeated. And the artists who refused to do it, we admire that. We're also ambivalent about it because we also think, it's childish, it's not realistic, and so on. So there you have it. Everything I'm saying, by the way, it might sound like random drivel. It's not. This is a carefully composed lecture. So that's part one was telling you fun is a theme. Part two was I studied in psychoanalysis for the reasons I told you, and I got to know the inner life of a good number of artists, and that's the conclusion I came to about them. Here comes part three, which is the talk that I gave at the medical school, I was going to say, at the old medical school, which is now the art school. We know something now about brain mechanisms of consciousness and brain mechanisms of emotion. And in fact, there's been something of a revolution in that field. And what we know is that the brain mechanisms of consciousness, the core brain mechanisms of consciousness, which is the deep core of the brain stem, a very ancient part of the brain that we actually share with all vertebrates. It's 525 million years old, that structure. At the core of that structure of the brain stem, there are a set of nuclei, a tightly, densely packed network of brain cells which generate our consciousness, the core basic switching on of the lights that makes you into a sentient being. It's like fabulously important, few cubic millimeters of neural real estate. You can destroy a part of your brain that's the size of a jelly bean, and you will be gone. When I say you will be gone, I mean your sentient being will be gone if you lose that little jelly bean of tissue. That jelly bean is called the PAG, the periaqueductal gray. That is the absolute core of your consciousness. So understanding something about the PAG is to understand something really important, because what are we if not our consciousness? I mean, it's all well and good to be alive, but if you're alive and unconscious, it doesn't amount to a whole lot. It's the conscious being alive, that's what we love in our narcissism. That's what matters to us, And when we lie awake at night thinking about our mortality, that's the bit we worry about, Where will I be? This beloved feeling self is all dependent on that tissue. So if we can understand something about that tissue, we can understand something bloody important about nature, about a very important part of nature. So we've studied it. And what we just sort of say it in a nutshell, the parts of the outer surface of your brain is connected to your external sensory perceptual organs, so you can see and hear and smell and all of that. This is how you become aware consciously of the external world, through those sense organs. But what about this core thing, which switches on all those lights? Because remember, when that jelly bean is destroyed, there's no vision, no hearing, no nothing. All of that is dependent on this tiny little structure. If those external sensory organs are what projects onto those external cortical regions, what is this internal deep brain structure? Where is it receiving its information from? And the answer is it's receiving its information from the interior of your body. The interior. Sensory organs are the external surface of your body. The internal jellyfish, the visceral autonomic body, the actual thing that this rest of you is there to keep alive, this part is here to learn about the world, sort of where's the food and where's the sexual partners, so that I can keep the living inside of me alive. It needs those things. This is all just a servant of the internal body. And that internal body is connected via not very complicated systems to the PAG. And the PAG, therefore, is a kind of monitor of the state of the internal body. How am I doing, biologically speaking, is what the PAG is there for. And how does it tell you how you're doing? It tells you by generating consciousness, which turns out to be made at its core of affect, of emotional feeling. That's the absolute foundation stone of consciousness. The PAG generates pleasurable and unpleasurable feeling, quality. And what feels pleasurable is what is good for your survival and reproductive success. If you do this, it's good, says biology. In terms of biology's scale of values, these things are good. Eating is good. Copulating is good. How do you know that? Because it feels good. That's why it feels good. It motivates you to do these things so that you can survive and reproduce. That's why the genome is constructed that way, as Raj knows. And the unpleasurable feelings, it's monitoring the state of your jellyfish, and it's saying, this doesn't feel good. Why? It's because this is bad for my survival and my reproductive success. I'm discouraged from doing it. Avoid that, approach this. Okay, that's how it works. I'm putting it in a very, very tiny nutshell, a jelly bean-sized nutshell, and in very few words. There's a lot more to be said about it, but the crux of the matter is this. Now I'm slowly recognizing who the students are not. The crux of the matter is this. Before the periaqueductal gray evolved, before 525 million years ago, there was no consciousness in the universe and on the planet. I don't know about the universe, but certainly on this planet, there was no consciousness. Consciousness evolved with the periaqueductal gray, and it evolved for this purpose, to tell you how are you doing within some qualitative scale of values. What's good and what's bad. Now, I'm not a right-wing sociobiologist who's telling you those are the values, that I believe in. I'm just telling you those are biology's values. Those are the values of natural selection. Those are the values by which your anatomy evolved. We as a species evolved. And the values of evolutionary biology are survival to reproduce is good, and dying without reproducing is bad. And the feelings of telling you how you're doing at any one moment in time, pleasure or unpleasure, is why consciousness evolved, so that we know how we're doing, so that we can guide our actions accordingly. It's not just some automatic program, like an ant. When you bang into this, turn left. If you bang into this, turn right, but not as far as to bang into that thing. And that's and it's like absolute predictable behaviors. With us, it depends how you're feeling, and you can judge it for yourself as you're going along. Like that. Nothing personal. Okay, you get it. That's how it works. That's how consciousness works. All of that then switches on the external cortical things. Like, I feel like this about that. That's why we become conscious of objects in the world, so that we can feel our way into them. We can feel, what do I feel about this? It's my subjective response to this thing is why I need to feel it, why I need to be conscious of it. This is where we're at in 2014 in terms of our understanding of brain mechanisms of consciousness. Now, I hope you can see, and this is what my talk was last time, that's relevant for aesthetics. It's also relevant for ethics. So the whole idea of value that only comes about with consciousness. Can't be value without feeling. And our understanding of how it works, I think gives us deep insights into, at least the foundations of any system of value, any qualitative range that's good or bad in an ethical or aesthetic sense. I feel like this about that, the projection of feeling, Einfühlung, the projecting into objects in the world, is what aesthetics is all about. That was what my lecture was about last time. I mean, I said a lot more, and I was brilliant. I haven't got time to tell you the brilliant bits. That's what it was about.
But Mark, you also said that ideas of consciousness have changed recently.
Very, very, very dramatically.
Always been.
Oh no, we used to think of consciousness in terms of external perceptual mechanisms. We used to think that until the 1950s, we thought consciousness derives from the cortical regions that represent our sense organs. Then from the 1950s, we discovered these deep brainstem mechanisms and realized, hang on a minute, they switch everything on. And so like good scientists normally do, we try to find some way of squashing the new findings into the old dogmas. And so the way we did that was we said, well, the contents of consciousness come from outside, and the level of consciousness comes from inside. So we said, this is not really consciousness, this brainstem thing, it's just wakefulness. And, that's really, we saw it in terms of sleep wakefulness mechanism. So you're awake, but you don't have anything in your mind until you become conscious, which comes from the outside. So the contents of consciousness come from the sense organs, and the level comes from the inside. The problem with that view is it actually feels like something to be awake, always. And feelings, affect, never comes from the outside. You don't, an emotion doesn't come through the sound waves. It's what it means to you. Your subjective response to the external stimulus is your affect. The affect, and periaqueductal gray, you stimulate the dorsal columns of periaqueductal gray. You have the most excruciating pain, unbelievable unpleasure, terrible. And you stimulate the ventral surface, the ventral columns of periaqueductal gray, you have literally an orgasm. It's just absolutely deliriously, deliciously, beautifully wonderful in all vertebrates. So don't tell me this is wakefulness, This is quality, it's consciousness and it's affect. These things are the same. The core of consciousness is affect. That's where it comes from. Now, I'm going to chapter 3. Today's 4. We are not fishes or lizards or snakes, I told you this stuff that I've mentioned so far, every vertebrate has it. So, it has implications for aesthetics and for art, but I mean, come on. Very elementary, implications. It's not by any means, enough of an explanation. Anything that applies to lizards is not going to really apply to Michelangelo. So, except that these very basic things that do, and that we've dealt with them. Now, I must tell you that over the periaqueductal gray and these other brainstem structures, in the hundreds of million years that followed, more things evolved. And above those core brainstem structures that generate feeling, pleasure and unpleasure, limbic structures, which is the next level up in the brain, evolved, which generate specific types of feeling. Our feelings are not just made of pleasure and unpleasure, as you all know. Think about the difference between fear, which is a form of unpleasure, and rage, which is another form of unpleasure. They're completely different things. So another very interesting thing going on in my field over the last, this has been the last sort of like 20 years, with increasing explosion of knowledge. We are learning what those more complex forms of emotion that evolved over pure pleasure and unpleasure, what they are. These are also very important things. They're the natural kinds of emotion. What are the basic building blocks of feeling? This is important knowledge. And we've learned that, at least so far, we've learned that there are at least seven circuits in the human brain, which incidentally, we share these 7 circuits with all mammals. So now we're talking about something that evolved 200 million years ago, which is when mammals appeared. Between that 525 vertebrate business, mammal business, around this point, 7 basic, more complex forms of emotion than sheer pleasure, unpleasure had evolved. I'm not going to tell you what those 7 are. There's also a little bit of controversy. There might be 8. No doubt there's more to be learned about them. But these are incredibly important things from a biological point of view, let alone from pure knowledge point of view. These are tools for living that you inherit just by dint of being conceived. These are again things that through evolution, these things have proven to be so valuable for survival and reproductive success that they are inherited. They have kept all of our ancestors going and made them able to survive, to reproduce to get to us, and that's why we've got these mechanisms built into us. Let me give you an example. Fear. Fear, anxiety is one such basic emotion. There's no controversy about this. Everybody knows there is a brain mechanism. We know exactly where its anatomy is. We know what its chemistry is. It does exactly the same thing in all mammals. If you stimulate it, they either freeze or they flee. I'm out of here. Okay, that's freezing and fleeing. That's what a fear response does. Plus heart rate, breathing, redirection of the peristaltic, all the blood that's involved in digesting your hamburgers goes to the musculoskeletal system. This is an emergency. And so there's this whole orchestration of things in your body. That's, by the way, where the diarrhea of true full-blooded fear comes from. And so, there's this orchestration of bodily responses and a certain affective tone. Oh shit. And also a certain facial expression. You can see it in all primates, all mammals. You can see it, you can see fear. We all got the same thing. Same anatomy, same chemistry, same connectivity, same basic behaviors. And then there's sort of like nuances for each type of mammal. They got their own special types of fear, but they're just variations on a theme. Imagine if you had to learn about fear. You've had it. It's like walk towards a cliff and jump off and see what happens. You will not survive and you will not reproduce. It'll be the only thing you learn as you're falling, and then you're gone. So those of your ancestors who were without fear, they're not your ancestors. They're gone. Those of your ancestors who had built into them a sort of, avoid response, let me get out of here, their genes were passed on, and that's why we all have fear. And thank God for it. We don't need to learn it. That's, really valuable, sort of like basic inbuilt knowledge. Okay, so now you know what I mean by a basic emotion. It's an instinctual hardwired, as they say, mechanism built into your brain. And this is something, as I said, more elaborate than mere unpleasure. It's a specific variety of unpleasure, which is not just avoid, it's avoid in a particular way. And then there's a whole lot of things that go with it. Again, I don't have time to go into all the complexities. We know a lot about each of these basic emotions. Okay, that's chapter 4. Chapter 5. Remember what I said about artists, the narcissists, and how we admire in them their refusal to compromise, their what is the word? They're just that. They're uncompromising perfectionism. I said that's something that in the artists I analyzed, I noticed they all have this. It's their narcissism preserved in their art. This part of me, I'm not going to fit in with the world. I'm going to fit the world in. I'm going to make the world like this. It's a product of me. Problem with that is that it's not only artists who like that. We admire that in artists, but guess what? The same thing exists in, let me say, scientists, like me. We also have our narcissism invested in our own sort of like, this thing, I'm going to produce it, I'm going to make it. And also, say, for example, human rights lawyers. We really admire or political great leaders like Madiba. It's the same thing. So it's uncompromising, this is right, that's wrong, fuck you, I'm not doing it that way, I'm not adjusting to the system's going to adjust to me. And we admire that, and we kind of are in awe of it, and we know, well, I'm not Madiba, I adjusted to the system. So that's the same sort of thing. So it's not something unique to art. It's true, I think, of artists, but not only of artists. So we need to say something more. So this basic idea of good and bad, which I started with, needs some elaboration. And I told you in terms of brain mechanisms, there's also some elaboration of this good and bad business. And these are what we call the basic emotions. They're more complex. So now, my next chapter is to tell you something about the one brain mechanism, the one basic emotion command system that I think is uniquely relevant to art. And that's going to be what I'm going to talk to you about for the rest of this talk. Chapter 6. You see these chapters are of unequal length. While you're being so nice to give people water, can I also have a glass of water, please? Thanks very much. Okay, so now, I've told you, these basic emotion command systems are bloody important things. They're serious, like fear, like rage. And again, you can see, the facial, you can see it in a dog, and in a monkey, and in us, it's always the same. Baring of the teeth, raising of the forelimbs, claws come out if you've got them. Boys don't have claws, and going for it, moving forwards, attacking the thing that's in your way, and that's how you evoke rage. By the way, you frustrate the animal, put something that it wants over there, and put yourself in between what it wants and the animal, and then you're an object of the rageful attack, hot aggression. I want to get rid of this thing. And thank you so much. This I also want to get rid of in a different way. Which shows you that there are all kinds of emotions. You can see why these are important basic tools for living, to know how to attack and how to defend yourself. Fight versus flight, fear versus rage. Rage versus fear. There also are basic emotions for sexual lust. Again, it's something you should not have to learn. It's like a basic tendency in us. Likewise, attachment, bonding. Likewise, nurture and care. These are things that are built into us mammals. We all just know how to do these feelings are just the stuff of consciousness because these mechanisms come with us. Now, I keep telling you, these are important things. They're basic biological tools for survival and reproductive success. They're really, really important. There's one mechanism amongst these 7 that we've learned about that it's exactly like all the others in the sense that it's hardwired, it's built in, it's got the same chemistry, same anatomy in all mammals, and it's very strongly affective. There's a major emotion attached to it. and it's a big surprise, and that's the one I'm going to talk to you about. It's the one I think is uniquely relevant to art. It's a big surprise because it seems so frivolous. It's play. If you think that these tools that I've been talking to you about for survival, fear, rage, nurturance, attachment, lust, and so on, you can see why they're important for the survival of our blooming species. But play, come on. That's not on the same level of things. And that's the value of science, by the way. Science, you don't have ideas that you then sort of like project onto the world and find them like philosophers do. We get surprises. Shit, who would have thought that? But there it is, a fact. And the play system is there. Every single mammal species has got play mechanisms built into them, and the juvenile mammal plays. Ask any kid, what do you want to do? What do you like doing most? Play! Why? It's fun. Why is it such fun? It's fun because evolution has attached great pleasure to it, to make you do it. Just like, copulating, you do it because it's very pleasurable. That's very rewarding. It's very important for biology that we copulate so that we reproduce. Not all of us have to reproduce, and in fact, we copulate only because it's pleasurable. We don't think I better do my biological duty tonight. You just think I'm going to have fun tonight. And then it's sort of like a random subset of those actually reproduce, and thank God for that. And that's how the species carries on. But the same with play. It's bloody nice. It's joyous, fabulous stuff. Kids just love to do it. Evolution has attached all this pleasure to it. Why? It's just nonsense. It's playing. So that's a big question. And so that's what we've been studying in relation to play. And I'm going to tell you what we've learned, and I believe it's relevant specifically to art. And remember what I said at the beginning. I'm just throwing out something, and then you're going to have to catch it. Because I don't know enough about your field to be able to do more with it than to just throw it out and say, I'm sure this is relevant. Please tell me it's relevant. Bye. That's how it's going to work. That's why there's no chapter 7. Okay, what have we learned about play? I told you. Well, first of all, what do I mean by play? Let me start off by operationalizing my term. I'm going to operationalize it too narrowly because I want to get to the core form of play. And what I mean by the core form is the one form that all of us mammals do. So there's variations, there's complexities, there's things about play. The internal experience of play, you can only learn about it in humans. You can't ask a dog, why are you doing that? What does it feel like? What do you think you are now? Or do you think you're a cop or a robber? You don't know. It's just so. What all of us mammals do, it's called rough and tumble play, and all mammals do it. And what's more, they do it a hell of a lot. And if you deprive a juvenile mammal of rough and tumble play, say take away half an hour of play today, it will play half an hour more tomorrow. Take away 45 minutes today, it'll play 45 minutes more tomorrow. It's like a basic homeostatic need. We need to play. It's bloody important. Why? By rough and tumble play, I mean it starts with an invitation gesture. The one animal tries to get the other animal to play. So like with dogs, for example, they go down on they go. It's like, you want to play? You want to play? And then when the other one responds, the one chases the other. That's what happens. And then they chase and catch. And then it's called dorsal pins, like this. The one jumps on the other one's back. Or ventral pins, rolls over, and then they're like this, belly on belly. And then, depending on what kind of mammal they are, they more or less tickle each other. It's like a sort of thing that they do with each other. With rats, it's over here. With primates, it's over here. And it's really lekker, and they giggle. They all giggle, they laugh. Even rats. You have to, no really, you need to have an ultrasonic converter thing because we can't hear those 20 kilohertz vocalizations. But when you translate them into sounds that we can hear, they're going, while they're doing their rat sort of dorsal and ventral pins. So the one chases the one, jumps on it, tickle, tickle, play, play, play. I'm on top, you're on top, I'm on top, you're on top, and then boom, this one's chasing that one. And then again, boom. And you see it in humans, you see it in dogs, you see it in squirrels, you see it in every blooming mammal. They love it. Know what I mean now by rough and tumble play. Okay. Remember also what I said already. I've said two things about play. The one is, it's fun. They like to do it. The second thing is that for now, just to get us onto the same page and to get to the basics of it, I'm talking about rough and tumble play. I know there's lots of other play, but this is the basic form that I'm talking about. Just to define it into when I say that all mammals do it. There's some things I want to say about rough and tumble play, but before I do that, I want to tell you this. Remember, I told you it's fun. You ask any kid, what do you like to do most? Play. What do you want to do? Play. Why? I like it. You observe play, and certain rules, certain general principles emerge. Here's the first one, which is a real surprise considering what fun it is. The vast majority of play episodes end in tears. So they love it, they want to do it, it's great, and it ends in snot en trane. The vast majority of times. Not only with us, with all animals. They end up fighting, or not being friends anymore. This is not fun. I don't want to do this anymore. Bugger you, That's how it ends. How does that happen? That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. For now, I'll tell you some more things which are actually heading towards telling you why that happens. Another rule that we've learnt about play, from observing it, rough and tumble play, is that there's always one of the pair becomes dominant and the other one becomes submissive. Now, I know, remember I told you I'm not a right-wing sociobiologist. I'm not telling you this is how the world should be. I'm telling you, sorry, this is the way the world is. When it comes to rough and tumble play, always one dominates, the other one doesn't. And it's roughly 60 to 40, depending which mammal you're talking about. It's roughly 60 to 40, some of them at 70 to 30, the ratio that is tolerable. If one playmate wants to be dominant more than 60% of the time, the other one won't play anymore. And that's what I mean by ending in tears. It's like, this is not fun. This is abuse. You're just bullying me. What do you mean? You're going to be on top all the time. You're going to be chasing me all the time. You're going to be the cop all the time. I just sit in jail. Like, what kind of game is that, I want to have the turn to be the cop. You be the blooming robber. I want to be the king of the castle. You be the dirty rascal now. If you do that, 40% of the time you're willing to be the dirty rascal and to be the one who's chased and to be the one who's underneath, then it's okay, it's still fun. Okay, it's very interesting. And it's also a little chilling, because as you can see, this frivolous, fun activity, it's also got something to do with establishment of hierarchies and dominance and submission and, but sorry, it happens. I'm telling you, it's the most robust thing. It happens like buckfuck. It just happens. Now, the other thing that we've noticed about how play episodes end in tears, I've told you one of the ways that they end is that the one wants to be dominant too much. The other way that they end in tears is that it becomes not play by becoming one of the other basic emotions. So the play turns into fear, or the play turns into rage, or the play turns into lust. Let me explain. You're the cop, I'm the robber, that's great, Okay, now actually I'm jailing you. Okay, now actually these are handcuffs, Okay, now you can handcuff to that tree and, cheers, I'm leaving you. Is that fun? That's not fun. That's actually really aggressive. Do you see what I mean? So likewise with the fear. Okay, I'm the cowboy and you're the Indian and I'm trying to shoot you with my rifle and poor you, you've only got bows and arrows. Yeah, look, I'm going to shoot you. Ha, ha, ha. And then eventually it's like, okay, now you shoot him. It's like, Jesus, that's not play. I mean, that's murder. That's real aggression. Okay, and the fear felt by the one who's being chased in those circumstances is real fear. It's not play. So, as you can see, from these very potted remarks I've made, we're getting to some general principle of some essential feature of what play is. Play is not real. Play is playing at. It's heading towards one of the basic instinctual situations, pretending you're in one of the basic instinctual situations, sexuality, dominance, aggression, fear, all of these really serious things, but you're testing them out. You're playing at them. It's as if. And once it becomes the real thing, it's not play anymore. So play is like an instinctual emotion that kind of like hovers around, testing out the limits in the space between the other ones, between the real ones, as it were. But it's very real in its own right. That's why it's so rewarding. That's why nature makes us do it, because it's very, very important for something. And what that something is for establishing your place in the social group. Where do I fit in? What is permissible? What's not permissible? What can I get away with? What can't I get away with? How does this little community work? Where are the limits? And so this thing about dominance that I said earlier, again, ugly a thing as it is about setting up pecking orders, social hierarchies, Unfortunately, they exist. And this is how they're established in the playing fields. By the way, juvenile rough and tumble play, it then becomes more and more competitive during adolescence until eventually it's not really a game anymore. And then it becomes the stock exchange, or real estate, or my farm's bigger than yours kind of thing. It's no longer play. But those things, those instinctual, territorial, power, dominance, aggression, fear type things that rule nations, that define human history and civilization, it starts in the nursery with play. And it's very important because, as I said, it's the mechanism by which we find out how we relate to each other, where do I fit in, what are the rules, what's permissible, what's not permissible, and so on. And the essential feature of it is this as if, this playing at, this not real, this not actually doing the real thing. Now, call me an idiot. I think there's something there that's also essential to art. As soon as, if you say, like, Duchamp takes his pissoir and says, this urinal is a sculpture. I mean, if it was just a urinal that you just piss in, it's not a sculpture. It was when Duchamp says, there's this thing, it's as if, it's like, it's pretending at, it's playing with, and so on. It's about this thing, it's testing the limit of something, it's an ideal form of, it's a kind of representative of, it's an as if. Then and with us humans, remember I said with other animals, we don't know what's in their heads. This is why human research is important. You can actually say, what are you doing? You say, I'm a cop. I'm the king of the castle. So all of those games, playing mommy and daddy, doctor and patient, or a teacher and pupil and all of that, it's all, by the way, please note, there's also all this kind of dominance thing in all of it. But it's social roles. And it's trying out a role and seeing, how does it work like this? How does it work like that? And the as-ifness of it is what makes it play. And I think that there's something there that is essential to art. It's an as-if quality. It's a not real, it's not the concrete, raw, actually killing somebody is not a work of art. It sort of like offends us. But there's something about that transitional space, that sort of testing of limits, that sort of playing with reality, that is somehow essential. I don't mean that art can be reduced to the brain mechanisms of rough and tumble play. I'm saying I think that there's something there. Something in what rough and tumble play is all about gives a little bit more content. When I say that art is about perfection, it's about the value, it's about doing it right, doing it perfectly, and so on. Yes, that's true. It's also true of many other things. That's what we admire about, as I said, great leaders, great sports people, great scientists, and great artists. That narcissism of theirs, that not giving up that sense, that value. But then there's this other particular, slightly more complicated thing. One of the instinctual emotions, the one, not rage, not fear, not nurturance, not lust, but rather play. There's something about that particular basic emotion which I think is of particular relevance to what we call art. I told you at the beginning, I warned you, I'm not an art theorist, I know very little about art theory. So I leave that to you. I hope you know something about art theory, because otherwise you're probably going to fail your course. I leave you with that ball called rough and tumble play, and with those basic thoughts that I've given you about what it's there for, and I submit to you that something about that is important. If you know something about art, please latch on to that, and then I will have done something of value in my lecture today. Thank you very much. I didn't speak for too long. Thank you.